everyone, and thank you for joining us tonight for our second virtual speaker series event of 2020. I just have a few quick housekeeping points before we get started. First, this will be a recorded event and will be shared for future use on the Flex YouTube channel. Please make sure to mute yourself during the presentation to eliminate feedback and background noises. We will have time for questions and comments at the end, so please either keep note or post in the chat section to be reviewed at the end. Please keep all comments and questions professional. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce our speakers tonight. First, we'll be hearing from Bill Moon from Gates & Burns Realty, followed by John Stoner from Northwest Bank, and they will be covering the topic of home ownership. Thank you both for presenting tonight. We really appreciate you taking the time. So if there's no other comments from our hosts, I'll hand it off to Bill.
Thank you, Laura. Appreciate you letting me be on here on the Flex series. I do have a PowerPoint for you for purchasing a home, just to give you some ideas what you'll be doing if you're interested in a home, another process to do this purchase. What I used is property we have listed currently up in Woodside City. The data sheet's in front of you. It gives you most of the information pertaining to the property. And when we do a showing on the property, you will receive this data sheet, they call it. Gives you all the information, how many rooms, bedrooms, bathrooms, when it was built, square footage, where the property is located, the size of the lots, acreage, where the taxing location is, zoning, taxes, and the assessment. Also gives you all the documents from the courthouse and other information on the property, utility-wise, if there's any other buildings. Also gives you room sizes and what appliances are available and what features it has. Also gives you what type of building is made by, with, material-wise, and what's inside the building. Also, there's public remarks, and then it gives you directions from, all the directions are always from Venango County Courthouse. So if you get with a realtor and they give you directions, everything's from the county courthouse. So that makes it easy. The next slide is you'll be receiving is a consumer notice. Tells you what agencies available to you in a real estate transaction. There's technically 5 different agencies available to you in a real estate transaction. One is seller agent, where we work for the seller. Then there's a buyer agent, where we work for the buyer. And then a dual agent, when the agent is both the buyer and the seller in the same transaction. And then there's designated agent, if you just want an agent just to be designated to you and nobody else, that's also. And then there's transaction licensee, where the realtor is just doing the paperwork for both parties and collecting a fee for that work. Go to the next slide. Then these are the rules and regs that as a realtor we must follow. If we don't follow these rules and regs, the realtor can get fined, thrown in jail, and lose his license. So there's a lot of, we're all run by the state. State has a code of ethics we all have to follow, and find a realtor that is not doing his job. There's a phone number you can call down there, the Real Estate Recovery Fund, in case you find judgment against Pennsylvania real estate owing to fraud, misrepresentation, decent real estate transactions. A phone number to call, and then give you legal representation. Also, before you disclose any financial information to a license, be advised unless you select a business relationship by signing a written agreement, the license not representing you. Business relationship not presumed. So, you know, they should be signed. You should be signing this right at the beginning when you're looking at the house, just stating that this was presented to you at the first showing of the property. This will go in your file for however long it needs to go. I've had customers look at houses for 2.5 years where they found something. So, you know, you never know how long this contract, not really a contract, is a notice to you what available. Next slide is we always tell everybody to get a home inspection. Regardless of the type of home or whatever, we tell you to get a home inspection because we don't know what the homeowner did to the house. If they did something wrong, you don't know. Usually, this comes after you get your sales agreement in. Usually you have to have that done within 20 days of signing a contract with purchasing a home. So we suggest you get a home inspection. I just did one this week with a young couple that's moving here from Latrobe into the Oil City area. And we did a home inspection and we found some items that they didn't know about. So that's what the home inspection is for. Usually the home inspection lasts for 2 hours. A lot of times you'll have the report back in the same day. So you can review that report, and then you usually have 5 days to respond back with that home inspection. And then the seller has 2 days to respond back to you with concerns over the home inspection. Next couple of slides is about lead paint. Lead paint could be anywhere on any of the homes that was built before 1978. So there could be lead-based paint in the house. We recommend that you do know there's lead paint in the house. The seller has to sign if he has any documents or information on lead paint on the property. Usually by now the property's been painted with latex paint, so usually it's all covered over. But if there is lead paint in the house, and if you're getting a government loan through Northwest or whether with John, usually if they see any peeling paint on a property, it has to be taken care of and cleaned up and vacuumed up, and all the dust and stuff has to be taken care of. And a lot of people say, well, so what? Well, it all depends on your loan if you're going to deal with lead paint. So that's a booklet that's pretty extensive. It's quite a bit of documents for you to read. It's in a regular book. It's roughly 20 pages long. So it just, we have it on there. So in case someone is in the group wants to purchase a home, they have that lead paint booklet in front of them. Now they can use this as one of the things that we hand out to let you know about lead paint. Testing for lead paint, it's very expensive. Last time I checked was $3,500 to have that tested for your home inspection. I think a lot of people know when you look at an older home, which we have in the area, there's lead paint in there. I think you don't need to pay someone $3,500 to tell you you have lead paint. And just a little common sense, when you look at the home, that's what the data sheet tells you, that what year the house was built. So it gives you an idea if there's lead paint in the property. So as we go through this lead paint booklet, we'll go on to the next slide. Below that. So where gets that through there, but we want to make sure you have that lead paint book so you can pull it up for reference in case in the future. So it's always nice to have some literature at your hand. The next one is a non-exclusive buyer agency agreement. But this telling you you're working with a realtor during a buyer agency agreement. So we're just saying we're working as a buyer and letting you know it could be a dual agent. We can, usually the broker may obligate to pay a broker a fee to work with you if you're buying a for sale by owner. Usually this is everything's confidential. You don't go out on the road and tell everybody so and so is buying the property. Everything's kept confidential. We have also broker serves as a seller, let you know we do accept a fee from the seller for selling their home. But we just let you know what agencies available to you in a buyer agency agreement, what that means to you. To the next page, it tells you if there's we work with other buyers. We just can't work with one buyer to live. We have to sell homes, so we'll be working with other buyers on other properties. The entire contract is between the broker and a buyer and verbal written agreement made before not part of this contract. If there's a conflict of interest, we have to notify immediately if there's a conflict of interest between the broker and the buyer. Deposit monies, usually when you purchase a home, they like to see it, the seller would like to see a deposit from the buyer. It range anywhere from $1 to $10,000. So usually whatever the seller would like to have down for earnest money deposit on the property, so you can purchase that home. And that usually once that deposit gets into the broker's hands is held until the contract is signed by both the seller and the buyer. And that deposit usually goes in a local bank that holds that deposit until the contract is closed or terminated, whichever happens first. And then down below talks about the consumer notice again, buyer's financing with Northwest or whatever. Just if you have any legal questions, you consult a Pennsylvania real estate attorney. Realtors aren't supposed to give you legal advice because we're not lawyers. And then we get down more notices to the buyer. So we cannot discriminate. Civil Rights Act, we cannot discriminate. All real estate agents don't have expertise on things, so it's best to seek out people that an accountant, a lawyer, or other appropriate professionals. Also, there's a website for notice regarding convicted sex offenders. So the buyer has an opportunity to get at Megan's Law, see if there's any convicted sex offenders in the neighborhood. We always recommend do that because we don't even know sometimes. Buyer inspections, recommend a buyer have an inspection on the property and make sure that they are well covered by inspection, so nothing comes up later on after the closing and refrigerator quit working or something like that. So you just never know. So I also brought up some buyers' estimated costs on the property that we had shown up on the first was 35 Woodside. Just to let you know where you need extra money on top of the purchase price. So I gave everyone a breakdown of what cost would be associated with a purchase of the property. It just doesn't mean you're buying it for $155,000. You also need closing costs on top of the purchase price. So you have title insurance. It's all based on the purchase price. It's a closing protection letter that goes also with the title search and insurance. Then there's closing fees, your attorney fees, recording the deed down to courthouse, there's a fee. Transfer tax is 1%. Each side pays 1% transfer tax. So it's 1% of the purchase price. You also have to have a property insurance on the home. Usually at closing, the bank will require an insurance binder. Make sure you have insurance on the property because we want to make sure that the house is insured in case there's a fire. Usually on taxes, you're going to either escrow your taxes in with your mortgage. And usually John will say that they need some money in the escrow account because they can't start with a zero balance on your escrow account. So they need some money in the account. So they might ask for a full year already paid up front or in an escrow account. So they hold that in escrow so your taxes get paid out of your mortgage payment. Taxes will be prorated at closing, so they'll prorate that. Then we have down inspection fees. We have property inspection fees. One inspector we use, he gives a free pest inspection because usually the bank wants to make sure there's not full of termites or other bugs in the house. So we want to make sure of that. Then John's going to require also, his bank's going to require an appraisal and credit report on the buyer. Make sure that he has a good credit score, and they'll check for debt to ratio income and make sure you have too much debt. And then down to the bottom, it gives you an estimate total cost down below line 8. Then we go over to the small paragraph where it says summary total monies needed. It shows the purchase price. The estimated cost was brought over from the column on the other side, brought over to this column. So we have a total of $162,984. And then we You have your mortgage. Usually your mortgage, you have to put 10% or 20% of the money down of your own. And so you get a mortgage for $145,000. $1,000 deposit is shown also there. So you have to come up with enough money for $16,984.95. So you need to have that amount of money. Usually we give this document to you before you sign a sales agreement. So you make sure you have enough funds in your account to purchase the property. Then the next page, you also receive the seller's property disclosure statement stating what the seller knows about the property. We usually give that to you up front, so you look at see if anything is out of ordinary on the seller's disclosure. He has to disclose everything he knows about the property, no matter what condition is in. If there's any changes during the term of the contract, with the listing contract, he has to make changes also and update that contract on a daily basis. So on the second page of the seller's disclosure, also there gives you information on seller's expertise, what expertise he has and what profession he is, and lets you know about that. And then the next one's ownership, tells you what type of ownership of the property, if the owner is there, or power of attorney, executor, administrator, or trustee, so you know who's holding the property. Next one is condominium plan home communities, like an HOA. Usually don't have those in this area, so I wouldn't worry too much about that. Next one's 4, tells about the roof and attic, when the roof was installed or replaced, so that has to be checked yes or no, or unknown or not applicable. Next page talks about basement and crawl spaces, so you know what if there's any issues of water damage or any leakage in the house. Next one talks about termites and wood destroying insects, dry rot pests. So if the property's been treated for termites or not. So he has to answer those questions. Next one, structural items. If they know anything about the structural items of the property, if there's any issues, if there's any, he answers any yes on this agreement, he has to state why stated yes. So he has to tell everybody what the issues are. Additions, alterations, if you put an addition during his ownership, he has to give that information also. As we go to the next page, it talks about the water supply. There's all kinds of different water supplies in Pennsylvania. So he has to let you know what type of water supply is on that property. And then if it's public, a well, community water, holding tank, cistern, or spring, just to mark all those yes or no. There's a bypass valve, anything about pumping or treatment of the water, general issues, anything to deal with the water. I just did a closing on a property that had lead in it. It was in a spring. It was very difficult, very expensive to get the lead out of the water. So the buyer had to take care of that. So due to his loan. So just different things that the bank throws up that weren't taken care of before closing. Next page talks about sewage systems. What type of the properties has a sewage system or a holding tank, or it's public or whatever. I've had septic inspections. I've had a gentleman that I went to school with, and he couldn't understand why he was paying $125 to have a septic test. And I told him, well, you don't know where the septic system goes on your property. So we did septic test, and within about 15 minutes, the inspector come back and said we had a problem. We had dye running down in a small creek, went into the neighbor's pond. So we had a big issue with that. And the owner had to replace the septic system. It was $25,000 to replace that system. So and he only paid $125. So he invested $125 in a $25,000 septic system. So you just don't know where your septic could go out to the ditch or wherever, but you need to have that inspected. You just don't want to be held liable afterwards for the septic system. So it's always to have that done. Next is plumbing. It just lets you what kind of materials are in the house, plumbing wise, and domestic water heating, what type of heat you have for water heating. And then you go to the next page. It talks about your heating system, how your heating is sourced to the property, what type of systems, if you have fireplaces or fuel tanks on the property. If there's fuel tanks on the property, you got to make sure they're not leaking and not underground and leaking. So you just bought the property fuel tanks, you're responsible to make sure those don't leak. Usually have those tested. Next is air conditioning systems. If they have air conditioning, what types? And then the next one's electrical systems. Some of these older homes still have fuses in them. So we have to make sure those are up to code, because what happens is you usually don't get homeowners insurance. You have a house that's fused. Only about one insurance company in the area that will do that, and that's Bars Insurance. So usually the bank wants updated electric, because they want to make sure, and homeowners insurance wants to make sure it's updated also, insurance reasons. Next is if they have other equipment or appliances on there, they would check yes or no that what would stay with the house at the time of sale. 17 would be land soils. What type of, there's been soil been taken in or filled into the property, settling side sinkholes or sewage sludge, anything that's been brought on the property to fill in anything on the property. Make sure that you do that. Next is on the next page is preferential assessment of development rights. If there are deed restrictions or farmland, forest land assessment, open space act, or agricultural area security laws. What property rights do you get? To timber rights, coal, oil, natural gas. A lot of this part in Venango County, a lot of the oil rights have been sold off to either Pennzoil or Quaker State, so those don't usually go with it. But if they do, you always want to ask if the called OMGs, if they're included in the sale. Also, you need to know if the seller needs to see if there's any flooding or drainage or boundaries in a property where they had water come in the house and water damage. Usually when you get homeowners insurance, you've heard of Carfax. There's Housefax. Housefax is when the insurance company, they put the address in and they'll see how many they had any claims against the property with snow damage, flooding, or whatever. And sometimes your insurance will be higher because of these other people's problems that it caused on the property. So when you go shopping for home insurance, do not go shopping around. We had a lady once that shopped around 10 times. What happens is they hit your credit score. This credit score drops. And then time to go see John, John says, well, I can't give you the loan because your credit score dropped below what we are required by the bank. So we always tell you to use who you have now with your car insurance. You're going to combine your homeowners and car insurance together. So you want to make sure you use who you have now. Go shopping after you purchase the home. That way they're not hitting your credit score and not able to get that loan. And we've seen people not be able to get a loan because of not returning the dish receiver for dish. So you just never know what your credit score will happen. It's very important. I think John will talk about that later on. Next page talks about hazardous substance, environmental issues. There's mold or indoor air quality other than radon in the property. You have to notify if the property's been tested for radon. We do have radon in the area. So it would be, you see somebody with a white pipe with a big fan on the outside of the property you're buying next door, I suggest you get a radon test. Radon does cause lung cancer. I've known two people that have passed away because of lung cancer and they didn't smoke. They had high levels of radon. So it's just something that you can't smell, you can't taste, you can't see it. So it's just a cancer causing problem. Talk about lead paint, tanks, and any other dumping on the property. And miscellaneous is deed restriction or title issues. There are deed restrictions in certain parts of the the county. When they built these properties, they sometimes put deed restrictions on them. You can't do, like up in Oliver Manor, they had put deed restrictions on. You can't park your car outside, it has to be inside the garage. Can't hang your clothes in your yard. Cannot have goats cut your grass for you. And your house has to have so much brick and wood on the outside exterior. So those are the things that there are deed restrictions in different housing developments. So it's best to ask about those. But there are deed restrictions, and a lot of them are also for single families. So you cannot can't make it into a duplex or rent it out. So you need to check those deed restrictions. And then financial, we're a public funding home association, the department may not pay for violation of zoning housing. The city does do, they do condemn properties if the water's not turned on. So we want to make sure there's no violations against the property. You can always call your local city hall or whatever and ask them if there's any problems with the property or restrictions or anything, they will let you know. And the next page is talks about legal. If there's any state and federal laws relating to the property, the IRS could have put a lien against the property or whatever. On inheritance tax, I'm working with one now, has an inheritance tax issue. They never paid it. Just found out how much it was this week. It took the IRS almost 3 months to get back to the seller. So that's a lot there. The seller has to sign this document, and then once you receive it and review it, the buyer has to sign it as well. So that's another document that you'll have to sign. So this is a little worse than buying a car. Buying a house is a lot more paperwork and a lot more time consuming. Because like a vehicle, you can go buy a $60,000 vehicle and you drive it off the lot that day. Buying a $60,000 house, you can probably take 60 to 90 days before you can close. So it's a little more regs on this on purchasing a property, a lot different than buying a vehicle. And then the next slide is a standard sale agreement. It is 14 pages long. When my mother got in this business, it was 1 page. It was on carbon copy and it was typed up. So you can see what our attorneys have done since then. She's been doing it for 44 years, and within 44 years, we're up to 41 pages. So a lot of it's just the first page is an informational page. It tells you who the parties involved are, who the broker is, where the property is located, and then if there's a dual or designated agency at the bottom. Buyer and seller will need to sign these documents as we go through them. Sit down, we'll review them, we'll sit down and read them for you. A lot of people want them sent DocuSign. You can do that also. On second page gives the date of the document when it was written up. Gives the purchase price of the property and that shows the deposit. Also on the document should say who's holding the deposit, because in case you need to get your deposit back, you need to know who's holding your deposit. That's line C there. Next is seller's assist. A lot of banks state that if you don't have enough money, you can ask for seller's assist up to 6% towards the purchase price. And what that does is come from the seller to help pay you for your closing costs. So that's also stated in. Then also you always have to have a settlement possession date. You always have to have a date on it. You just can't leave it open-ended. But we have put down January 31st, 2021, or before buyer seller agree. You can close earlier if everybody's got their documents together, but it's always nice to have a date in there. You don't want to leave that blank contract. And then as we go down through the contract, it tells you how municipal bills are paid in Pennsylvania from January 1 to December 31st. The school taxes are for Philadelphia or Pittsburgh or Scranton are from January 1 to December 31st. In our area, it's from July 1 to June 30th. Those are called your fall taxes. And then the spring taxes are your city and county taxes. Usually you want to put down of what type of deed you're receiving from the seller. Receiving a general warranty deed, or you're getting a special warranty deed. It just depends what type of deed you're getting. And then down there it says payment of transfer taxes are divided equally between buyer and the seller. Now, if you get in there and the seller says, well, I'm not paying transfer taxes, I want the buyer to pay both sides. So you have to type that into that space and state that. Possession of the property will be your deed, existing keys, physical possession of vacant property, free of all debris. So what we tell everybody, usually say if you're closing at 1 o'clock in the afternoon, is do a walkthrough an hour before closing. Make sure everything is in the house that was supposed to be there. Refrigerator, stove, washer and dryer, all those appliances. Didn't do any more damage. I've had people say, well, I don't want to do a walkthrough. I'm good with it. Well, then I get a phone call about an hour later and the refrigerator is gone. I said, well, I can't make the refrigerator come back. You should do that walkthrough. So I tell everybody, let's do a walkthrough. You're allowed to have 2 in the contract. Do a walkthrough just to make sure everything's there, what you're buying, because some stuff disappears and you can't get it back. And also, there's other things that come up missing also. So it's best to do a walkthrough before closing to make sure an hour before. If there are stuff missing, when you go to closing or talk to your attorney, you can tell them, hey, we need to hold this amount of money back from closing. So this client comes back to the property. It might be $1,000 for a refrigerator or whatever. So you want to hold $1,000 in an escrow account with your attorney's office. And once that appliance returns, you can release that $1,000 to that seller. So you always want to, if they're left trash there, I've seen people leave a dumpster full of trash. So you never know. You always want to do a final walkthrough. Days and times of essence down there, number 5, you have to written accept all parties. When the contract gets signed, we have dates to follow. You just can't arbitrarily all sign it whenever. There's a time frame. So we gave them, we dated the contract November 10th. They have 3 days to sign the contract. So we want to make sure that it's dated and it's signed by them. If not, the agreement is void. We go to the next page. It'll tell you what type of zoning where the property is located. Zoning is a big thing to make sure you're able to do whatever you want on that property. This is zone RU, is residential, and that's what the type of zoning is in Corn Planter Township. And fixtures and personal property, these are the items that will stay on the property. They have dishwasher, range dryer, and refrigerator. The washer's not there, so we don't not in with the contract, so that will not be there. And all the other things, the mailbox will stay, solar panels, windmills, all the stuff that's already attached to the building will stay. If it's gone, you need to do that final walkthrough. You're going to have a mortgage contingency. You're going to waive. If you're doing cash, you can waive that, or you can elect to have a mortgage. So usually with the mortgage, we'll ask John to send us over a pre-approval letter stating they're able to get the mortgage through John's bank, so we can move forward. So they can show the seller you're going to be applying for a mortgage and you're pre-approved. So they're purchasing the property. They're getting a loan for $145,000, 30 years, conventional fixed. The mortgage lender is Northwest Bank with John Stoner. So we've got John on there for the contract, and also gives you the interest rate. And then also down below, we have to have the documentation show that you got to have that lender approval by December 31st. So we will make sure that everything was delivered to the lender within 7 days after getting the contract signed, to make sure that John was able to do his job and then send it up to his upper management to have the appraisal ordered for the property. And then on the next page, just talks about more mortgages, telling you about the loan to ratio value on the properties and everything else, and make sure it appraises well for the loan. A lot of times, want to make it contingent on your appraisal, you can make that a contingency in the agreement. And then if you're getting an FHA or VA loan, they recommend that the purchase price comes in at what you're purchasing for. And then Department of Housing and HUD notice to buyers about buyer's acknowledgement about talking about getting to make sure you get a home inspection. Next page is if you have a change in buyer's financial status, if you lost your job or you got another, lost your job, or you had financial status, something happened in your family that you're not able to purchase a property, you have to notify us immediately so we can make sure you get your deposit back. We've had that happen a couple times through this COVID. People got laid off and weren't able to buy or purchase a home, so we had to terminate the contract and get his deposit back. And then 10, seller represent that the status of the water is public water, public sewer. There's 5 different type of sewages in Pennsylvania. So, and you want to make sure what the property has come with it. Make sure everything is done accordingly to the laws of the Commonwealth and make sure it works. And then also the property could be in a historic preservation property area, sort of like down on Liberty Street down Franklin. They do have historic restrictions down there, so you want to make sure there's nothing funky down there that you might have, because you want to paint the whole house white and you can't. You got to match all the historic colors downtown, so you need to watch where you purchase a property, make it where it's historic preservation Franklin areas. And then land use restrictions, these are usually for like 10 acres or more. If you have property that's 10 or more, you're able to get discounts on having more than 10 acres, like clean and green. You get a discount on your taxes if you get clean and green program. Next page talks about more land use restrictions. And then there's the real estate seller's disclosure law, just stating that the seller must fill out the disclosure before you sign the agreement. Must review that before signing. And then in case you say you're building a new home, you're going to have to get a require a highway occupancy permit from the Department of Transportation in case you need to build a home. You want to put a road in your property, you need to get permit from the PennDOT to do that. And then it also talks about internet devices could be inside the home during the walkthrough, and you have to make sure those are going to stay in the home. And then down 11, this is a waiver contingency. This is where you make a contingent on the contract, what inspections you like to do on the property, and your due diligence to do that. On the next page, page 7. This is where all you elect or waive to have your inspections done on the property. First one's a home inspection, environmental hazards. You elect or waive to have that done. And the second one is wood infestation. That'd be termite. If you want to have a termite inspection, those are elected or waived. And second, down at deed restriction or zoning, in case you want to change the zoning there, you have to go in front of the zoning board to get that. So it's going to take some time, and you probably need another 60 days to do that. You want to change the zoning at the property. Next is water service. They're going to do a water test on the property. If you want to have a water test on the water that's coming out of a well. We just, like I said, we had that one with lead in it, and I had another one with E. coli in it. E. coli will just tear you up, and you got to take care of that. We had to put a UV light on the water to kill the bacteria that was in the water. We did Clorox the well. We dumped a gallon of Clorox down the well and let it sit for 24 hours, and then we ran the water until it would no longer smell Clorox, and we retested the water. And then if you would like to have radon, check for radon gas in the home. And then if there's an on-lot sewage disposal system, you can have that tested. And what they'll do is dump dye down the toilet and fill up the line with about 400 gallons of water. And they'll load it up on different loads, see how much the dye comes out anywhere on the property. Next, you'll want to elect or waive to make sure you have able to get property and flood insurance. I tell everybody like that because you need insurance for the mortgage. So you're gonna have to make sure you're able to get insurance for the property. That's also continued. Next one is property boundaries. If you want to pay to have a survey done on the property, make sure where the property lines are. That's usually around $1,200 to $1,500 to have a survey. The county, you can get on the county parcel viewer. Usually you can see where the lot lines are on the parcel viewer. You pull up the property address, you can find that very easily. And then the next one is lead paint hazards. If you want to test for lead paint on the property, and like I said, it's very expensive to have that done. As we go down, you notice regarding property environmental inspections, it just tells you that property might have all these different items in the property. Just best to have inspections. 13 tells you this is a contingency period. Tells you have 20 days to do inspections. What if you did them? If you say we put 10 days down, well, what the problem is, you don't know what that inspector's schedule's like to do the work. So usually we go out 20 days because we're not sure what he's doing that week. So it's best to check with his schedule before you put in shorter days. Then on the next page, talks about if you have to replace the existing all disposal system. Report came up, say that the septic system failed, then we have to go back to the seller and show them that the system did fail. They would have to put a new system in. 14, title and survey costs. Usually put 45 days. What you're going to do is with your closing company, whatever, they're going to hire an abstractor to do a title search on the property, make sure the title is free and clear. So when you receive it, if there's a lien against it, they'll be taken care of at closing. We had one couple that was selling their home. They didn't know they had an adjustable rate mortgage, and they agreed to a purchase price. Well, they went to closing. They had to bring $5,000 to closing to pay off their property. So technically, they didn't get enough money for the property to pay off their mortgage. So they bring money to the table. I've only seen that happen once since I've been doing this. So as we go down further, there might be oil and gas on the property. So you'll have to fill out an oil and gas addendum to make sure they want the oil and gas with the property. We go to the next page. There is a coal notice. There could be coal underneath the house. It goes on every deed in the Commonwealth. Let you know there could be coal underneath the house. You'll see more coal over in Clarion County than you will in Venango County. So, but I don't think they're coming to Venango County and did coal underneath anybody's house here in town. The notice and assessments and admissible requirements. I just let you know in case the seller gets the property reassessed during the term of the contract, sale of their home. You have to notify you within 5 days if you still want to purchase the property in case the taxes go up. Now they can't do, just can't come in and reassess somebody's property without reason. Usually when they do a reassessment, it's usually countywide, where you hold a building permit to build a property, you're going to come reassess you out once the building is done. A lot of people, well, how do they know that? Well, I talked to the assessment office down in the courthouse, and they use satellite imagery to find out if you built something on your home and it's bigger than what it was before. So it'll be knock on your door, come and reassess your property. At the bottom of the page, 16, condominium plan homeowner home association. There is none in pretty much the county, so it's mostly where like Florida or down south. On the following page, just talks about more about condominiums. We don't have really that. Then they talk about real estate tax and assessed value. Your property is assessed by the county, and taxes are usually on the data sheet we give you. And just like I said, if they say the city of Oil City states that at the end of the year they need to raise taxes, we'll go by mills. So your property would be a millage rate based on the assessed value of the property. Next is maintenance risk of loss. The seller maintain the properties in current condition. under normal wear and tear. Now, if any part of it's taken by the state or eminent domain, you'll have to notify you immediately. If that happens, we'll have to terminate the agreement and return all your deposit. But he has to maintain the property's current condition. You have to notify you, change anything out, say the dishwasher failed or the refrigerator failed, you have to replace that. Down at 19, home warranty. We can sell you a home warranty on your home, which works after a year. Usually the seller pays for that warranty, and it's good for 1 year to the buyer, and the buyer can renew it in the future if they want. We have not had any luck with those home warranties in Venango County because due to the people coming into the area to do the repairs, they usually don't show up on time, and you end up calling someone local to take care of it. And home warranty doesn't cover it. On the next page, this agreement cannot be recorded down to courthouse. Only the deed can be recorded at the courthouse. The assignment, this agreement is binding upon all parties of their heirs, personal representative, regarding accessory to extent assignables. So whoever signs the contract and everything, and the deed will be recorded down to courthouse. Governing law, venue, personal jurisdiction, the valid construction of this agreement will be follow the laws of the Commonwealth. And then we come down to Foreign Investor and Real Property Tax Act, FERPA. What that is, in case someone is a foreigner coming into the country, we have to make sure, or a foreigner selling their home, that they have to make sure they hold enough tax back to make sure that the taxes were paid since they were a foreigner. Here comes Megan's Web law up again. It's in the contract. Tell you where to check for Megan's law for sex offenders. Representation, we're not representing the properties in current condition. If any other brochures or anything has been made during the contract, we have to give you those about the property. 26, default termination, return of deposit. That means if something happens to the buyer and he terminates agreement, by this agreement, we just can't release the deposit to the buyer. We need both parties to agree of the release of the seller of the deposit monies. If the deposit monies, if there's a dispute over entitlement deposit money, you have to go to mediate. To do that, usually it's about $500 to mediate. You get your deposit back, and if there's no fight over your money, you usually have to have 180 days, and whoever is holding the deposit money will release that funds within 30 days of receiving how the distribution of that deposit money will be taken. Next page. Talks about mediation, how to mediate, and then releasing all of the seller, brokers, licensees, employees, or any officer, partner, and corporation be liable or through them for any claims, loss, or demands, including not limited personal injury, property damage, or consequence therefore, whether or not presence of termites or other wood-boring insects. That's why we state we need to have a home inspection. We don't represent condition of the home. Here's this real estate recovery fund again, in case you find judgment against a Pennsylvania real estate licensee. So we talk about that again. Down 30, communication with the buyer and seller. We usually had people, buyer and seller, do side deals in Giant Eagle and say, I bought his lawn tractor after the sale, and the lawn tractor's not there. Well, the realtors didn't know what was going on because he did this side deal in Giant Eagle's parking lot. So we always tell everybody, if you have questions, so you're working with the seller, if you have any questions to the buyer, we have to have that communication go through the realtors. If there's something about the buyer, let's talk about the seller. Everything has to go through the channels with the realtors, so the realtor's on the same page as everyone in the transaction, because you've seen things happen outside of the contract that we had no control over. All the headings on the contract are there to offset everything what's going on in the contract. And the last page tells you there's special clauses. So there could be settlement contingent of addendum, sale contention, property, continue marketing of property, sale of other property, time kicked out addendum, settlement of other property contingency, appraisal contingency, and short sale. Usually what happens is someone's buying selling their home and they're trying to buy another home, so it's contingent on them selling their home. Purchase this property. Usually we give a 72-hour wipeout clause. We would continue marketing the property that the other buyer wanted because he's still contingent on selling his home. And down at the bottom there, buyer and seller in order to receive the copy of the agreement for signing. There will be executed with more counterparts, which would be deemed original, which counterparts together constitute one agreement of the parties. You have to notice the parties must sign agreements, binding contract, parties transaction or advice and consult a Pennsylvania real estate terms before signing desired legal advice. So everybody will sign this contract, and then they'll get each buyer and seller will get a copy of there. And then this is when all the home inspections start taking off from the date they sign. So that's my 52 pages of my PowerPoint this evening. If anybody has any questions right off the bat, or we can wait till at the end, and I'll turn it over to John, and he can do his banking.
Thanks, Bill. Good job there. A lot of information.
Yeah.
And I'll have some more for you. But like Bill said, it's not like buying a car. It's not like going out, and it's probably the biggest purchase of your life. So be patient. A lot goes into it. Use your resources. Talk to the realtor. They have a ton of information. They're good at that stuff. And talk to us. Every time people come in, it's a lot of times you don't do it many times in your life, so you don't know. With the updates every year, every month, there's updates, there's changes to everything that goes on. So like I said, take your time, be patient, don't rush into it. But thanks, Bill. My name is John Stoner. I work at Northwest Bank. So I'll go through with you here. That first page is kind of the qualification guidelines. So those are kind of the four aspects that we look at to see if you qualify for the mortgage. The first one there is credit score requirements. So that's a big one, as the reason why a lot of people can't get into a house and are renting is credit issues. So absolute minimum in every loan program, I'll get on to, there's a handful of different loan programs that you can get into. The absolute minimum for us here at Northwest, and I guess as disclosure, I'm going to go through with you everything that we do here at Northwest. Every bank is a little different. So, if maybe we don't offer something, or our credit requirements are a certain thing, that may be a little different at other banks. So I'm going to go with what I know. And our absolute minimum credit scores for any purchase is going to be a 640. And in most cases, with a 640 in the mid 600s, you would be required to put 20% down. So the down payment is based on, the credit, the value of the home, a couple other different things. But 640, mid 600s usually requires a 20% down payment. 740 or higher will normally get you the best interest rates out there, the best terms allowable. And in between, like I said, it just depends on, if it's joint application, what both credit scores are. We do pull from all three credit bureaus when you go to apply. And we take your middle score whenever you apply. So a couple things that we like to see are at least 3 active trade lines on your credit report. So a car loan, a credit card, and a personal loan, or a couple different credit cards, but they do like to see 3 active trade lines. So that's using the credit cards. Just because you have one, make sure you're using it. I always tell people credit cards are the best way to build credit and maintain credit. A lot of people don't agree with that because a lot of bad things can happen with credit cards, but you just have to have that self-control, because with credit cards you can use them every month, pay it off, and never pay a penny in interest to the bank. Problem is that minimum payment amount is whenever you can spend $1,000 and pay $20 back a month is whenever you get into trouble. So like I said, that's one thing that we look at is 3 active trade lines. As Bill said, no collections. So if you forgot to take back your DirecTV box, or you had a dental bill and you moved and you never got that bill, sometimes they don't try very hard until they send it to collections. So it's always a good idea to just keep an eye on your credit. If it goes down for any reason, make sure you look into it, because a lot of people out there have medical collections or even $50 or something like that just kills your credit if it goes sent to collections. So that's a big one also to keep an eye on. One thing before you apply, there's a couple different things that you can do to kind of get your credit up shorter term or short notice. And one is to pay down your credit cards. Your credit score revolves around a lot of different things, but one of them is if you have, let's say you have $1,000 credit card, if you have a $950 balance, you're maxed out, which is going to hurt your credit score a little bit. So if you pay that down to say a couple $100, that's say 20% of your allowable limit, that looks better on the credit score, and then it's going to boost your score up a little bit. So that's one of the quick things you can do before you apply, is try and pay down your credit cards. Because if you come in with a few maxed out credit cards, that could be a 20-point swing in your credit score, and either have a higher interest rate or require more down payment or something like that. So second one is employment history. They look for a 2-year work history. Doesn't have to be with the same employer, but they do like to see a 2-year history in the same line of work. So obviously, if you get another job and to make more money, we're not going to dock you for that. If you go from being a plumber to being, a real estate agent or something like that, and then go into a service industry, we don't necessarily love to see the hopping around. But another aspect of that is not a lapse in income. So if between jobs you waited 4 or 5 months to get another job, that doesn't look great. They do like to have an explanation for that. If you're coming right out of school, obviously you can't have a 2-year work history right out of school. So if you have a current contract with a company, or you are on salary, or you are getting paid and have worked and have at least a few months work, we'll look for your transcripts from college and go from there. And assuming everything else looks good, we can make that work. So biggest thing is to have a 2-year job history with no big lapse in income or employment, and that looks good. Third one down there is your debt to income. So that's your total monthly income, basically compared to your total monthly debt. So all the debt that shows up on your credit report, they'll look at your monthly payments for all that debt. And again, a lot of people think that utilities go into that, phone bills, none of those go in there. Credit reports just show borrowed money. So it's any credit cards, personal loans, car loans, mortgages, stuff like that. So that's going to be your total monthly debt divided by your total monthly income. And whenever we do calculate that out, for bonuses, commission, incentives, stuff like that, we are able to use that based on a 2-year history. So if you got a big bonus last year and you came in, we may not be able to use that because it might not be a guaranteed bonus. So we'll usually start with your base pay, and then if we need more income, we can go from there and take a look into your prior 2 years. Same thing with overtime. Just because you're making a lot of overtime right now doesn't necessarily mean that we can use that to qualify you, because we do want to see that it's consistent overtime. Loan to value. Bill touched on that a little bit. It's just the amount that we can lend you based on the value of the house. So that one basically comes down to the appraisal value coming in at least the sales price or higher. If you want to go to the next page, just kind of a quick touch points, the loan process. There's a pretty sizable team of people that work on your loan. You do have one point of contact for that process, but there is a lot of different stuff that goes into the application. The application, first thing we absolutely need to take any application is that sales agreement that we just went over with Bill. So once both parties have agreed on that sale, initialed all the spots to initial, signed everywhere, then we can start the application. We can't apply for a mortgage without having both parties agreed on that sales agreement, agreed on the sales price, and then submit that sales agreement back to us. A couple of things you'll need for the application for income is 30 days of current month's worth of pay stubs, 2 years tax returns and W-2s, and that's usually what we'll need as far as income goes. Once the application goes on, we order all the reports immediately. So the appraisal, we order your credit report, we lock in your interest rate right then and there. And then we go in and we pull a flood zone, make sure the home's on the flood zone. As Bill stated, it is highly recommended to get a home inspection. We do not require an inspection. I will always recommend it. I've seen a lot of people avoid buying themselves a home that they really didn't want based on things that come up during that inspection. So like I said, it's highly recommended. We do not require it though. Sometimes we may require it based on what the appraiser sees. So the appraiser will go into the house, do a full appraisal inside and out, and that comes up with the value. That's where we determine what the value of that property is. If they see a huge crack in the basement floor, water coming in the basement, maybe no railing on the stairs, stuff like that, it may need an inspection from a certified contractor, depending on what the issues are. So in that case, we may require something to be done. And like Bill said, we may require repairs to be done before the purchase is done. So depending on the repairs, we did one over in Rocky Grove where they were requiring the sewer to be basically had a new sewer pipe put in there before we could even close the loan. So that kind of goes back to, you're going to want to go back to your realtor, go back to Bill and let them know, and then they can reach out to the seller and kind of try and negotiate how that's going to work, who's going to pay for it, when it can get done, as soon as possible. If it's major work or stuff that you require, whenever you're buying the house, we could escrow the funds, so we could lend you an amount based on what the home's value will be after the work is done. And then we escrow those funds. So let's say you bought a house for $100,000 and wanted a $20,000 addition put on the back, or a back sunroom added to the house. We can do a mortgage with improvements. We'll appraise the house as a completed project. So we'll use the future value, and then we hold on to those extra funds, and we pay the contractor when the work is done to make sure it's done properly and complete. Underwriting process, that's really, you wouldn't have much to do with that. That's once you submit your income documents, we go in and we verify your employment history. We look at your 2 years tax returns and employment history. And then we come up with your current income and what we're going to use to base the loan amount and your debt to income off of. They'll also, in the underwriting process, they'll also need to verify your cash to close. So a few slides forward, we'll go over that cash to close. But for the verification during underwriting, they're going to ask you where that money is coming from. So let's say it's $15,000. They're going to need to see 2 months bank statements showing that those funds are available for you for the closing of the mortgage. And that would be your total cash to close, would be your down payment plus any closing costs associated with the loan. And then the approval, obviously that's the best step. We go in and approve the loan. We send everything over to Bill, let him know it's approved, and then we reach out to your closing agent. So you can either choose an attorney or any title company, real estate settlement company that does mortgage closings. And then we send the documents over there for them to start working on their part of things, which are, the title search, to get the title insurance, make sure there's no liens against the property from years and years ago. Make sure that you're getting yourself a clean title whenever you buy the house, so nothing comes back to bite you in the end. So as Bill said, again, it's a lengthy process. It's not, you don't go in and buy it and you're in the house. Average turn time from application day. So once you've already signed the contract, you bring that contract into me. We put on the application from that day to the day that you're sitting at the lawyer's office or your closing agent's office, signing all the paperwork, getting the keys to the house, is about 45 to 60 days right now. So if everything's perfect, we can definitely close it sooner, but that's pretty standard, 40 days, 45 days, right around that time frame. And that's for us to do everything on our end, and then for the attorneys or closing agent to do everything on their end, so that we can get everything together and close the mortgage within that 60 days. So the next page there just goes over your pre-approvals and pre-qualifications. A lot of people think of them as one and the same. They are a little different, but in most cases, either of them are sufficient for what you're going to need. The pre-approvals are very I guess, rare to come by. Pre-qualifications are what we do. It's what a lot of other banks do in the area. And basically what that is, we just take your verbal, your stated income, and we pull your credit. We do Experian, so we pull from one of the credit bureaus. When we take a look at what your total debt is, and we make sure your credit's good. And if your credit's good, and we look at your total debt compared to your total income, and we'll give you the maximum dollar amount that you can afford for a 30-year mortgage. So a lot of people come in whenever they have no idea what neighborhood to look in, what kind of houses, what their price range is. You tell us what your income is, try and be conservative. So we don't get to the end of the deal and say, wow, the income that you told us, isn't quite as high as what it actually is whenever we verified it. So that's what a pre-qualification is. Normally take a day or two, and we'll give you a certificate that says, congratulations, you've been pre-qualified for $100,000. So then, with your income that you have and the debt that you have out there. Now, what can fluctuate in those are property taxes and homeowners insurance. We do base those off of, kind of a standard ratio for your property taxes, 2%, I think, of the sales price, and then homeowners insurance as 0.5% of the sales price. Now, those are obviously estimates depending on the neighborhood. You can go from paying $1,000 a year for property taxes, and then some nicer neighborhoods, up $6,000, $7,000, $8,000, $10,000 a year for property taxes. So, like I said, that could really alter the affordability of a house. If you find a nice house in a neighborhood that has lower taxes, obviously you can afford much more of a house in that situation. So the pre-approvals, if you ever come across a pre-approval or need a pre-approval, basically they are a little longer, take a little longer to get, because they go in and pull the credit and they verify your income. So you provide them with your pay stubs, tax returns, stuff like that. They can underwrite the loan while you're looking for the house. So that way, whenever you find a house, most of that part of the underwriting has already been completed. And basically we just need to wait for the appraisal to come back. So like I said, those are more rare to come by. Most places do the pre-qualifications, just do a quick, contingent upon verification of the income that you've stated. And then, like I said, you get the certificate, you've been pre-qualified for X amount of dollars. You can take that to the realtor, or if you're building, to the builder, to let them know that you are a serious buyer. You're not wasting their time, and the homes are within your price range. How to be pre-approved, just call in. You can do it online, you can do it over the phone, you can stop into the branch, whichever way you'd prefer to do it. Like I said, it takes about 10 minutes to do, and then we send it up to a mortgage underwriter to review, and then they'll send us back a certificate, assuming everything is good. So the next page there, kind of just a breakdown of closing costs. And I might have you, Laura, just skip to the next one. That's a total breakdown, and I know Bill showed you one too. That's kind of just a closing cost estimate. I just used $100,000, so hopefully you guys can see that. But I just used the property with $100,000 and assumed a 5% down payment, which is our minimum for a standard conventional loan. So it goes down through all the bank fees and services, the appraisals, the origination fees, the credit report, flood zone determination. Then it goes down to, a lot of the stuff that the attorney does, so that title work, title insurance, and then down to your property taxes and homeowners insurance. As what was explained earlier, we have to have funds in that escrow account to get things started, so that we don't start out with zero. It's a regulation that we have to have a buffer in there. And then also, if you buy the house in February, we want to make sure there's enough money in the account, in that escrow account, so that we can pay the taxes come March or April, just a couple months in. So you are required to purchase the first year of homeowners insurance up front. Usually within a week or two before closing, you'll go out and get your homeowners insurance. And then you'll bring us the policy so that we can make sure that it's effective on the closing date, so there's no lapse, there's no overlap or anything like that, so that the current owners will fall off and yours will get started on the same day. Seller assist, you'll see that bottom line there is seller assist, which I have 0 in there. But like Bill said, it's something where if you might not have quite enough that you need to close, we can get seller assist if the seller agrees upon it. Now there are some stipulations for seller assist. If you're putting less than 10% down, you're only allowed to get 3%, up to 3% seller assist. if you put between 10 and 25% down, you're able to get up to 6% seller assist. And then if you put over 25% down, you can get up to 9% seller assist. So on this transaction, if you were to put 5% down, you would be eligible for 3% seller assist, which, for this purchase would be $3,000. And, that's $3,000 that you don't have to bring to the table. That sometimes the sellers are more inclined to go the seller assist route than to just take $3,000 off the sales price. And then, like I said, that $3,000 would come off the top of their end and help pay for your closing costs and down payment as well. So those are always things that can, make or break the loan, depending on your cash to close and what your cash situation is. So that's pretty much, there's one section in that top part where the LTV ratio, that would be the loan to value. It starred out for some reason, should be 95%. The loan to value is the loan amount divided by the value of the property. So in this case, $95,000 is the loan amount and the sales price is 100. So that would be a 95% loan to value. Interest rate on that top line, as you can see, interest rates are super good right now. 2.75 is today's rate for us for a 30-year mortgage. Normally there's a 30-year, a 20-year, and a 15-year rate. Right now, with the economy the way it is, they are fluctuating, but they are extremely low. So also a good time to refinance if you have a mortgage already. But like I said, 2.75 for a 30-year. And this would be assuming a 740 credit score. Like I said, they're most likely a conventional loan. You're only required to put 5% down unless you have some credit issues. And then, as Bill alluded to before, also on the appraisal, there's a contingency on that sales agreement that we went over that makes sure that the appraisal is coming in at least the sales price. So let's say this appraisal came in at $95,000. We can't base the loan amount off that $100,000 sales price anymore. We have to go with the lesser of the two. So in that situation, most times you would go back to Bill and say, hey, the appraisal came in at $95,000. Or are we able to renegotiate to bring it down to 95? Because if you did still want to go through with that purchase, you would be required to put that extra $5,000 down into your down payment so that we're basing it still off that $95,000. So that's kind of a breakdown of the closing cost. That is an estimate. Usually this is on the high end, so those are maximums for pretty much everything. The exception of the homeowner's insurance and property taxes, those fluctuate depending on where you're buying the property. So that could have a major effect on the affordability of the loan as well. So we'll go to the next page there. Next page, along with credit, your credit score, your credit requirements. This is another reason people rent and that can't get into a mortgage. It's because the down payment requirements and those closing costs. Even if there was no down payment, you're still going to have $4,000 to $7,000 based on whatever the purchase price of the house is. So your down payment requirements, there's many different loans out there, which all require different down payments. A conventional mortgage, your standard mortgage with no specialty loans, no government backing or anything like that, you'd be looking at 5%. 5% is our standard down payment for pretty much all of our mortgages. And then, like I said, I'll go down into the government loan programs. So we do offer the FHA, the USDA, and the VA loans. An FHA loan, those are sometimes a little easier to write depending on your cash to close and employment and credit score. We're able to work with lesser credit scores with some of those government loans. So the FHA loan is a 3.5% down requirement. And there's actually two government loans that you're able to do a 0% down, and those would be the USDA and the VA loans. So the USDA loan, it's a rural housing loan that basically you have to map and show that the property is in a USDA property, which from my knowledge, I believe everywhere in Venango County would qualify for a USDA loan, at least mostly everywhere. And the nice thing about the USDA loan, that's going to be the absolute minimum cash to close. So with that, you can do a 0% down, but also you can borrow even more than the sales price, depending on what that appraisal comes in at. So let's say we go back to that 100,000 sales price and the appraisal comes in at 105. we may be able to use, based on your credit, we may be able to borrow more than that sales price to help you cover some of those closing costs. So I've seen those deals come through and they've only needed maybe $1,500 to close, which is, no down payment, and then you can borrow some of those closing costs as well. Now with that USDA loan, there is a USDA fee that would be there for the life of the loan. So that is, the price that you pay to be able to do that is a small fee tacked onto your monthly payment, and it's on there on those USDA loans unless you were to refinance the loan or pay it off. So a VA loan, those are for veterans. So you obviously have to be, believe, honorably discharged to be able to qualify for the VA loans. Those can also have a 0% down. So those would be mostly just closing costs would be what you're bringing to the table. Another nice thing about the VA loans is it doesn't have any private mortgage insurance. So if you're able to qualify for that, that private mortgage insurance could be waived. And I'll actually talk about that here a little down, actually this slide. So along with the government loans are very nice, but with everything that goes along with the government, there's extra eyes looking at it. There's extra approval processes. It's a longer process. The appraisals are very difficult on some of those government loans. So the FHA and the USDA loans, those require certain appraisals that, as Bill said, if there's a piece of chipped paint in the corner of the room, they're going to require that to be fixed. So some of the stuff, you think is minor, well, I can do that after. But if we're doing a government loan, they won't let us write the loan until everything is completely taken care of. So there's usually a few little things that come up, especially on older houses around here, whenever you're going that route. So while they are really nice and have really nice perks, sometimes it's the more difficult route to go, depending on the situation. We do offer some specialty loan programs that are not government backed. And those would be our Heroes Loan, Physicians, a first-time home buyer, and our First Front Door program. So Heroes Loan is basically our version of the VA loan. We can do that loan for any first responders, EMTs, firemen, police officers, and then as well as veterans or active duty military. So a nice thing about that is you're only required to put 3% down, but if you put 10% down, that waives private mortgage insurance as well. So I guess let me jump up to the private mortgage insurance. If you don't put 20% down on a property, you're required to pay private mortgage insurance. And that's basically what MGIC charges you to allow us to write that loan, even though you're not putting 20% down. So most cases, it's normally always 20%. And then once you get to 20%, so a few years down the road, you guys reach that 20% equity point, then that mortgage insurance falls right off of the loan. So it's just a temporary thing. It's for whenever you don't have 20% equity in the property. So with the physician's loan as well, those are basically any practicing medical professional. You can be right out of school or established, have a practice. But those also require a 0% down payment. So that's our in-house loan that we do for medical professionals that requires 0% down, and then also waives PMI. So those are really good programs for the heroes and physicians that give you some of the perks and the benefits of maybe the lower income or first-time home buyers without falling into that criteria. First-time home buyer, a lot of people come to us with the first-time home buyer asking us about it. Basically, the big thing there is you can't have owned a home in the past 3 years or had your name on the deed. And you have to fall within a certain income guideline. So it's less than 80% of the area's median income. So, we have charts, every year they update with median income for the area, it goes by county. So the first-time home buyer program, it is really nice if you do fall under that income guideline. Depends how many people are living in the house. And it would require a 3% down. And it would also waive private mortgage insurance with 10% down. A nice one that I'm going to touch on at the end of the slides here is the First Front Door program. That one's actually through the Federal Home Loan Bank of Pittsburgh. And you're actually able to receive grant money to match your funds. So it's a 3-to-1 match. So again, that one is a 3% down requirement. You do have to fall under those income guidelines that I explained before. But again, they're all good products. Just depends on the situation, depends where you're at in life as to where you might fall and what's the best for you. Another thing is the source of your funds. So anytime you're using cash to close, so any money that's going towards your down payment or closing costs has to be verified funds. So they have to be, either your payroll. If they're gifted to you, it can be gifted from an immediate family member. So that's the rule about gift funds. And then they would have to sign a document, basically a gift letter stating that they don't expect you to repay them in any way. And if they see in that 2-month bank statements, if they see, let's say, a $5,000 cash deposit, they will require to have documentation of where that came from. So I know it sounds crazy, but if you have $5,000 laying under your mattress and you bring that in and you want to use that for your down payment, most likely we would not be able to use that. It all has to be in your bank account for the past 2 months. Any large deposit over, I think it's 500 or 1,000, they will look to verify where those funds came from. Private mortgage insurance, I did touch on that. There's a lot of good programs that have certain waivers that either 10% down. The VA loan, no private mortgage insurance on that. The USDA, no private mortgage insurance on that. But there may be small fees that may or may not be worth it for you depending on the situation. So that's what private mortgage insurance is, and that's what your down payment requirements are. So again, between credit and your down payment, those are the two big things. Save. You gotta have funds on deck to ready in cash to spend, and cover all your closing costs, plus depending on the loan program, to cover your minimum down payment. So next slide there, it just goes over those conventional versus the government. I kind of already touched on those. There's different down payment requirements for all those government loans versus a conventional mortgage. The appraisal requirements are the big ones that we see that there's issues, like I said, especially in this area with the older houses. It's a really good idea to run it by Bill or whoever your realtor is beforehand, and he'll have a pretty good idea if it's going to be sufficient to pass a USDA or an FHA appraisal. Usually they have a good eye for that stuff, and they know what to look for as to what might need repaired or paint that might need redone in certain rooms and stuff like that. And again, the different underwriting process. It's a longer underwriting process because on top of everything that we do to ensure the loan is a good loan, to make sure we have all of our I's dotted and T's crossed, is then we have to send it through for government approval. So that's going to add a few days onto the process, at least a few days for us to submit it, and then come back with an approval, or if there's any issues that need worked on or anything like that, then we would let you know. So the last slide here, I just wanted to go over the First Front Door program. It's a really nice mortgage program that not a lot of people know about. We try and get it out there, but every year the Federal Home Loan Bank of Pittsburgh puts out a pool of funds that are eligible for first-time home buyers, and they can match up to $5,000 they can give you in grant money to go towards your closing costs and down payment. Normally they come out early spring and let you know. I believe last year was about $12 million that they put out onto the table, and basically any first-time home buyers that come through and want to apply for this program, we can get you pre-qualified. There are the same income limitations. You are required, stay under the 80% of the area's median income, but it offers a 3-to-1 match. So if you're approved for this loan and the funds are still available, it is first come, first serve. So when the funds are gone, the funds are gone. They're usually around till late summer. I believe this year was the end of August or beginning of September was where the funds ran out. So if you were to bring in $1,667 to the table, then you could get your full match of $5,000. So by you bringing in almost $1,700, you can have, your cash to close is then up to $6,700 based on that grant. Now you do have to take a small homeownership course. I think it takes about an hour. It's online. You just print out the certificate and bring it into us, and so we know that you did it. But it's a really nice program. And like I said, if you can spending an hour on an online course definitely is worth it for $5,000 that you can get towards your closing costs and down payment. There is a lien that they put against the property with that. So $1,000 falls off each year. So you're in the house for 5 years, that lien is totally gone. Those funds are forgiven and you never have to pay them back. If you move out in the first year, that they would require you to pay back some of those funds. Like I said, about $1,000 falls off each year. But still, like I said, for an hour course online for first-time home buyers that fit into that criteria, definitely worth it to get into. We can reserve funds early. If you're looking for a house and it's April and you're going to want to buy that year, we can do a pre-qualification. If your pre-qualification's approved, we can submit to reserve funds for you. And we can reserve those as long as you find a house within that next 6 months, we can use those funds and you're still eligible for those gift funds for the grant. One thing that I had jotted down on the last one was just equity loans for people that already own their own home. I know I did all that stuff is really geared towards purchasing your home, getting the mortgage to buy the house. But there's also other, with owning a home, there's definitely perks. Besides paying rent, you're paying your landlord and that money's gone. When you're paying your mortgage, you're building equity in the house. So you're able to go in and take out an equity loan. A lot of people do equity loans to do home improvements. You pay down the house for a few years, come back in and we can do an equity loan based on that equity that you already have in the house. You can do improvements, renovations. A lot of people do it to consolidate debt. If you get yourself stuck in some credit card debt and you want to just pay it off, get a low fixed rate. A lot of people come in and consolidate all their higher interest debt using that equity. People buy cars with it, buy campers, motorcycles, stuff like that. It's going to be, really low interest rate. Depending on the situation, could be better than a car loan. They're usually right around the same rates there, depending. But that's pretty much what I have. It's really important to know a lot of this stuff or to know who to talk to, because you're not expected to know all that stuff. I mean, the stuff that Bill went over, the stuff that I went over, nobody really knows that unless you work with it every day or buy a lot of houses, and most people don't. So it's important. It's a really good investment. It's a really big investment, but it's a really good investment. I talk to people all the time. Even if you have to pay the private mortgage insurance, $40 or $50 a month, it still beats paying rent. If you pay, I think probably an average around here, $600, $700, $800 a month for rent, even in 5 years, $700 a month, that's $42,000 that you would have in equity in a house, minus some interest. But like I said, that's $42,000 that you put into rent in 5 years. If you're paying $700 a month, that you could be putting towards your own property, and ultimately you'll be able to sell that at the end. You'll be able to use equity, redo the house, make improvements, renovations, stuff like that based on the equity that you already have. So it's important. It's a really big investment, but it is a really good investment. They're not making more land. They're not making more property. So it is, a really good investment that rarely loses value unless you really don't take care of the property. But yeah, that's what I have for you. So I guess if we want to open it up to questions, or if anyone has anything after that.
Thank you, guys. We do want to give some time for questions. So feel free to unmute and ask a question. You can type it in the chat box. You can type it in the chat box to me and I can ask it, whatever anyone is comfortable with. But while you guys are thinking of those questions or writing those out, I had a quick one for you, John. You mentioned for that first front door program, the income, I think you said it was 80% or lower for the area. What would that range be around here if you have that info?
I do. So right now for 2020, and again, it's based off of the persons per household. But for the 80% of the area's median income in Venango County for a one-person household is $36,350. And then obviously, the more people that live in the house, that income goes up. A two-person household, $41,550. 3 people is $46,750, and normally goes up about $5,000 each additional person in the household.
Great, thank you. That might give some people some ideas if they, can even consider that. That's great.
Definitely. Yep.
Yeah. A question that I have, and this could really be for either of you, especially keeping young professionals in mind. That's who we gear towards. What are some common downfalls that you see with people trying to go through the process, and what might be ways that we could avoid those downfalls?
So I'll start off by just saying, the two big things are credit issues and cash to close. So, people work on their credit, and then they're not saving money. You need to have some money on hand to be able to afford to put that down payment and closing costs. It is a pretty big initial cost, but definitely worth it in the long run. The second one that we touched on was just small credit issues. Like I said, just monitor your credit. If you have, I know Discover Cards have it. I think Capital One has it, where it has a credit monitoring that comes with your credit card that you can just keep an up-to-date check on it. They're not always 100% accurate, but if you have a medical collection that hits collections, it'll drop your score by 50 points, and then you're going to want to look into that, see what's going on. There's a ton of people out there with medical collections because they've moved away and they never got the bill, and insurance didn't cover something, so they're stuck with $50 that they never saw the bill for. That just tanks your credit. So people come in, and have no idea that that's on there. They come in with everything ready to go, and their credit score is 580 because there's a $200 cable bill that was never paid when they moved away or something like that. And we just can't do anything about that. And that takes time to rebuild that. So just to have a close eye on your credit. Like Bill said, if you pull it over and over again, it's just going to hurt you. So to have one of those services, I know Credit Karma, the scores aren't 100% accurate all the time, or close, I guess. But a bigger thing is to see what kind of negative stuff is on there. I had a guy that just got a new credit card, and he thought it was set up to pay it automatically and never paid his payment. And 3 months later, his credit score was down by 100 points because he thought the payments were being made, and they weren't. So if he would have had some sort of monitoring of that credit, he would have saw his score go down and say, hey, what's going on? As opposed to being surprised when he comes in to apply for the mortgage. So those are the biggest things that I see, just to keep an eye on that credit. Usually over 700, you're pretty much in the clear. You've always made your payments on time. And really the credit scores are based on your ability to repay debt. So it's anything that you borrowed funds, credit cards. And I say the cheapest and easiest is a credit card, just because you can, use it once a month and pay it off, and you never have to pay any interest. A lot of the credit cards out there have nice perks for all the dollars you spend. You can get cash back, miles, you can get cheaper gas. Just make sure you don't get over your head and in debt with the credit cards is a big thing too.
Great, thanks.
Hey, Kat, I want to tell you, back in the early 80s, I paid 18% interest rates on my mortgage.
Wow.
So this is the time to buy.
Below 3 now.
Wow. And Bill, kind of along those lines, common downfalls, especially thinking for young professionals, but when you're looking at a house, what are the things that you should look at? For example, like, oh, I don't like this wallpaper, so I'm not going to buy this house, or I love this house, but the roof leaks or whatever. What kinds of things are important to pay attention to?
Well, I always tell everybody, if you're going to look at a house, do a drive-by, different times of the day. See what the neighbors are doing. See who's in around. Maybe you don't like that neighborhood. You don't like that person that lives next door. Always do a drive-by at certain times of the day. And then, if you are interested in the house, set up an appointment to go look. We want to make sure everything's taken care of. Usually when I go in, my background, I did 26 years of construction. Okay, so I know how to tear them down, rebuild them, build new ones. So I could see things that would cause problems right off the bat. And I try to tell the seller, you know, hey, you need to take care of this. And you get a problem here. It's an easy fix. This is all you need to do. But we can also make sure the buyers see that also and tell them how they can get it repaired. There's plenty of contractors that are knowledgeable about fixing things on the fly or whatever, easy to fix. During our home inspection yesterday, I was able to call an electrician in, I was able to call a plumber in, and able to get estimates at the same time during the home inspection. So the buyers were real impressed that people did show up. We try to use good people to do the work because we don't want to send you to someone bad, because what that reflects back on us. Same with closing companies and attorneys. We want to make sure you go to the right people that do their job, get the job done so you can move into your home. Just want to make sure everything goes smooth. We always call it the real estate roller coaster. There's always somebody right at the end going to throw timber across the rails. You're going to stop. You won't be able to close by something very small because they're going to pull your credit again right before closing because they want to make sure you didn't buy something large. We tell people, we give them the 10 rules of not what to do during the transaction. And one of them is not buy a car. Appliances, don't do anything during the transaction. It's like John says, you're gonna screw up your credit score, and then John will go, I can't give you a loan.
Yep.
Your credit score dropped below what our recommendations are. So we have the 10 commandments of what not to do during a transaction. So a lot of them are not to buy anything big things. Wait till you close, and then you can do all you want to the house and make your repairs.
Good advice.
And a lot of times, like John says, with the mortgages, the bank wants to make sure the house is perfect. Well, there's no perfect house anywhere in this world, but we want to make sure that it's well enough taken care of that it's not going to become a problem down the road for you, for the buyer, because we want to make sure you're happy with your transaction and your property.
Right. Right. Well, thank you. Any other questions from anyone?
I have a quick question. So how has COVID affected the market? Are there more people selling? Are there more people buying? What is that looking like?
We have people coming out of other areas where COVID is high. They're coming in here because of other things, because of COVID. But we're working with COVID daily. We were shut down for 2 months early in the year. We can do everything online. Anything you need to do, we can do documents through DocuSign. We can take virtual tours or whatever you need to do. We can take you through the house, take photographs or whatever, or take you through if you don't want to go. With COVID, we can, just a lot of them. Sellers, I have a couple sellers that don't want any showings during this pandemic, but it is what it is. But people are moving around and moving out, moving in. People notice what the cost of living here is very reasonable. A lot of people have made their money elsewhere in the country and they're moving back to the area because they live comfortably and safe because of our area and what's going on in the world today. So it has changed a lot since I got into the business. So
and just to follow up with that, with Bill, obviously a huge thing that's affected the mortgage process and the mortgages are the interest rates. Interest rates, as soon as this started back February and March, they really shot down all the interest rates. Prime went from 5.25% to 3.25%, just like that. And like I said, our 30-year mortgage is at 2.75. It's been as low as 2.5. It fluctuates between 2.5% and 3% right now. So that's a big thing that COVID has caused. And yeah, I've seen, I guess, not sure if this is COVID related or not, but values of properties are coming in very strong right now. And I've had a lot of buyers coming in. I don't deal with the sellers very much, but I have seen a ton of people buying, whether it's because the interest rates are so low, take advantage of it. Or like Bill said, people coming in from the Pittsburgh market, the Erie markets, to kind of get out of the city and come here. But yeah, we've had a good share of new purchases this year throughout the past 6 months or so.
So what's the demographic of people coming into the area? Is it a lot of younger people?
Yeah, I think
say
so.
it varies.
Yeah, I think younger and older.
Yeah, I've seen quite a range. I guess the younger people that are buying are more already live in this area. And I'm trying to think, coming from outside, they've had employment as established and they are now have the ability to work from home. So I've had a couple people from Pittsburgh come up and, buy a place on the river because now their work is pretty much 100% virtual, or maybe they need to go to the office once or twice a week or something like that. So that I've seen, the older people coming to this area to, maybe early retirement home while they're still working, stuff like that.
Well, be sure to send any young professionals our way. Let them
You got
know
it.
flex. But any other questions? I've got one more quick one, but last chance for others to ask any questions. Going once, going twice. I don't see anything in the chat. All right, so my last question should be an easy one. So if everything went perfectly, what would you expect the length be from the time you walk in and say, I want this house, till you walk in with the key? If in a perfect world, what would that timeline be? How long?
So Bill, I'll start with you. How long does it take for them to walk in and say, I want this house, till they get the signed sales agreement?
Oh, sales agreement, we can get that signed. I could have that done within the hour, a sales agreement. After you
How
get
about
done
when they
looking at
walk into with the key, they have the key in their hand?
Okay, so
Probably
once they have that sales agreement signed by all parties, if everything is absolutely perfect, usually about 45 days.
Okay. So we're looking at less than 2 months that you
Yep.
should expect if
Yep.
everything goes right.
Correct.
What in an average world, what would that length be? Maybe you have a few little bumps along the way.
45, 55 days. So whenever they apply, they're locked in for their interest rate for 60 days.
Okay.
So we make sure they get closed within that 60 days, unless something comes up that just can't be done in that 60 days. They're locked in for 60 days where their interest rate won't change. If something comes up, depending on what the issue is, depends on what we do at that point at 60 days. If they want to keep their rate and it's, we were waiting for 3 weeks to get their tax returns, they'll have to pay a small fee to keep that interest rate or see what the rates are at that point. But yeah, normally around that 45 days is pretty average. Even if everything is perfect, it's not, stuff just takes time. The appraisals take time to get back to us, and really we don't see much. And then once we have the loan approved, send it over to the attorney. Depends on how busy the attorney is as to when we can do that, get the title work back, stuff like that. So yeah, I would say I wouldn't anticipate any quicker than 45 days, just not to get your hopes up. But yeah, should be right around that.
Great. Thank you, guys.
Yeah.
Just remember, just mind everybody, we're not going to disappear after this broadcast. If they have any questions, they can contact us anytime.
That's right. We're always here to help. And like I said, I sit here for hours just kind of coaching people how to get ready. And I may never see them again, but that's what we're here for, is to go over this stuff that you would never know otherwise. And you'll never know unless you're buying a house. So we're here to help.
Awesome. All right. If there's no other questions or comments, I just want to thank Bill and John again for your time and willingness to present tonight. Thank you, Kat, for moderating, and thank you to everyone for attending. Please stay tuned for our upcoming events, and thank you guys, and enjoy the rest of your evening.
Thank you for the invite.